Every day, the sales of electric cars are increasing, since it's the key to solving the environmental crisis. Spoiler alert, it's not a solution, but just another venture to make more money. And it's easy to prove the point. Let's pretend we have a time machine and go back in the past when everything was just emerging. Namely, back in 1896. America was in its Gilded Age, experiencing rapid economic and industrial development. Railroads, factories, and mines were under construction. In other words, massive industrialization. In that year, everyone heard the name of a talented 33-year-old engineer, Henry Ford, who introduced his first car, a quadricycle. 12 years later, he created the legendary Model T, with its cars spreading all over the world. They were radically different from modern vehicles, even in terms of fuel. At the beginning of the 20th century, almost all cars were fueled with ethanol, C2H6O, or more simply, alcohol. Why choose this kind of fuel? It was obtained as a result of agricultural activity, prospering in America at the time. There was plenty of alcohol, it was cheap, and engines worked perfectly with it. If it weren't for the Rockefeller family, we would still be filling our cars with that stuff. They were the richest family in the world, the ones who founded the Standard Oil Company. Their main product was kerosene, used to light houses and streets. It was poured into pots and set on fire. The kerosene was slow-burning and much cheaper product than whale oil, which had previously been used for those purposes. But later, kerosene lamps were replaced by electric light bulbs, making the Rockefeller product redundant in the marketplace. Also in the production of kerosene, there were many unnecessary substances, including gasoline. So they started experimenting with it and decided it could be fuel for cars. At the same time, Americans consumed a lot of alcohol, negatively affecting the country's development and society as a whole. Therefore, an active movement to ban alcohol began. The major advocates and sponsors of this movement were the same Rockefellers. However, they were not interested in the future of sober America, but only in business. So in 1919, the US introduced prohibition. Alcohol was completely banned. The only legal use was to mix it with gasoline. And who produced gasoline? The Rockefellers. They actively pushed for prohibition in order to get rid of competitors and take over the market for automobile fuel. At first, everything was going well. A lot of gas stations appeared, and people were actively using gasoline. However, one thing came to light. The engines worked much worse on gasoline than alcohol, and they broke down very quickly because of the detonation process. This was caused by the octane number of gasoline that was less than 50. By comparison, modern gasoline has an octane rating of 80 to 95. Gasoline producers realized that they had to do something to keep gasoline as the primary fuel. So they started experimenting and adding different substances to gasoline. One of them was lead, which surprisingly increased the octane number. General Motors was testing a new fuel. Surprisingly, these tests lasted only a few weeks because they suddenly got sick. When the engineers saw that the engines performed much better on leaded gasoline, they immediately launched mass production, cooperating with Standard Oil. This fuel was great for cars, with better efficiency than alcohol. But there was another side to the coin. The factory workers were not happy at all. They developed health problems and behavioral changes. Dozens of Standard Oil workers were dying or going insane. The reason for this was lead, a dangerous and poisonous substance that, together with gasoline, got into the air, food, and destroyed all life. General Motors and Standard Oil executives realized this and made it so that no one knew about it since it was a big business. Perhaps we might all be lead poisoned right now if it weren't for one scientist, Claire Patterson, who most people considered insane. He was researching to find out what the age of our planet was. In fact, he discovered that the entire Earth, even the sea floor, was covered with huge amounts of lead, and it wasn't normal. He compared a 1,600-year-old Peruvian skeleton and the bones of modern humans. The study showed an increase in lead levels in the bones of modern humans of 700 to 1,200 times in the last 50 years. Claire Patterson spent half his life proving that lead is dangerous to both people and the planet. Various factories, especially gasoline, were contaminating the planet with lead, which could lead to disaster. The world listened to him, and starting from 1973, cars were equipped with catalytic converters to reduce the amount of lead in gasoline. Only 30 years later, in 2002, no more leaded gasoline was produced. Now it's possible to breathe in fresh and clean air. But it's not that simple. The other problem has emerged: global warming, dramatic melting of glaciers, and global cataclysms. This is caused by the pollution of the atmosphere with carbon dioxide, CO2. One of its sources is internal combustion engines, and the struggle against them is becoming a global mainstream, making eco-fuels, improving engines, and recycling everything we can. The cherry on top of the cake is Elon Musk, who has made electric cars super popular because they don't pollute the environment. At first, people were skeptical about electric cars because they were on the verge of science fiction. Then electric cars became mega cool because of the trend to be environmentally friendly. The world started to move towards using only green energy, and leaders assured us that oil would soon be unnecessary. And once there's no oil, that means it's time to buy an electric car and accelerate the process. This is the basis of the movement towards a more environmentally friendly future. With such trends, Elon Musk doesn't actually need advertising. In 2021, electric cars accounted for as much as 36.4% of all registered cars, while in 2020, their number was only 18%. The rate of their popularization is insane. And also worth mentioning are hybrid cars, which can run on both fuel and battery power. They make up 15.2%. Electric cars are projected to make up 65% in 2060. But according to the data, it will happen much faster. The irony is that electric cars emerged a long time ago, back in the 19th century when nobody yet knew about gasoline. Ferdinand Porsche liked dealing with them, and in 1899, he presented his first electric car, where the engines were in each wheel. But at that time, electric cars were not popular because of the operational difficulties. It was very hard to charge them, and they didn't drive for long distances. Now, on the contrary, electric cars are convenient, especially when there's an autopilot function. But not everything is as simple as it seems at first glance. EV versus ICE. People believe that cars are the cause of global warming. This is because we see a lot of them every day. We don't see as many steel or oil refineries, and we don't see as much smoke from them. All means of transportation, cars, airplanes, ships, and trains produce 16.2% of harmful emissions. At the same time, agriculture produces 18.4%. Even if you own an electric car, you need to charge it. Almost all electricity comes from exhaustible resources. And the most interesting thing is that all energy production entails 73.2% of harmful emissions into the atmosphere. And what about natural sources of energy? Solar panels, windmills, hydropower plants? They're not harmful to the planet. But there are a few problems. First, the transition to green energy is very slow. Whereas in 2002 we got 17% of our energy from solar, wind, and water, in 2021, that number has changed to 25%. That's an increase of only 8% in 20 years. Second, seasonality. Solar panels don't charge at night, and windmills without wind do not spin. You might have an argument that some countries already use energy exclusively from natural resources. Iceland, for example, has 100% of its electricity from renewable sources. They're good. But there are two nuances. Iceland is an island with many mountains and thermal springs, from which the country gets the energy. Second, just over 300,000 people live in Iceland, and they don't need that much electricity. Let's compare not even a country, but a city, Los Angeles. With a population of 4 million people, it requires 13 Icelands to supply it with electricity from renewable sources. That is, there are several factors that affect whether the country can provide itself with energy from renewable sources. These include the size of the country, population, the availability of natural energy sources, and nuclear power plants. In spite of this, we should not jump to conclusions. Electricity production does pollute the atmosphere, but let's understand how gasoline is produced. First, oil is extracted deep from the ground with a pumping machine that consumes electricity plus emissions. Then the oil is transported to the refinery using pipes and an electric pump or gasoline-powered ships, plus emissions. At the refinery, oil is heated to 700 degrees or more. It actually burns, and harmful emissions are released into the air, plus emissions. Ready gasoline is transported by trucks from the refinery to gas stations, plus emissions. People buy gasoline, drive cars with ICE, and more CO2 enters the atmosphere. In other words, to produce electricity for electric cars, at least 5 times less harmful emissions go into the atmosphere than when making gasoline. So, electric cars are still more environmentally friendly than cars equipped with ICE. Even if humanity does not get 100% of its energy from renewable sources, the level of pollution will be much lower. Because large-scale development of the environmental problem started with the age of industrialization, especially with oil refining activities. History and many facts tend to repeat over and over again, and today's automakers do as the Rockefellers do. No one needs to know about the problems. At the beginning of the video, we mentioned the dangerous lead. The point is that a similar problem has arisen again. Electric cars drive thanks to batteries, like the ones in your phone, but hundreds of times bigger. They're made mostly of aluminum, iron, plastic, cobalt, and lithium. At first sight, there's nothing surprising. Do you know about the specifics of cobalt and lithium extraction? The largest deposits of cobalt are in the Republic of the Congo, 60%. And even children are engaged in mining for $1 a day. They do it without modern equipment, so injuries and lung diseases are common. Cobalt goes to LG Chem plants to make batteries for Tesla, Chevrolet, and Renault. Now let's talk about lithium, which is only 1% in the battery. Over the last 10 years, it has become so popular that now it's called the number 2 oil. Lithium mining is not just environmentally damaging, it's death to all life as far as the eye can see. It's even worse than lead in gasoline or an oil spill in the ocean, poisoning all life in the water. Lithium is extracted by evaporation. Lithium-rich water from underground sources is pumped into artificial pools of 20 soccer fields each, where it evaporates under the sun for about a year and a half. The color of the water changes to a toxic yellow. Turning into dust, lithium rises into the air and poisons all life around. In addition, fresh water is the main resource for lithium mining. Its catastrophic reductions are visible in all mining regions. Another problem is the purification of lithium by chemicals, which simply creates masses of various hazardous wastes. The most ironic thing is that lithium is used in the equipment we use to generate energy from renewable sources. Batteries for solar panels are also made of lithium. All of these batteries have a major disadvantage. They can't last forever. After 8 to 15 years, they will run out as fast as an iPhone in cold weather. After 8 years of use, the battery performance of electric cars decreases by an average of 70%. But if you live in a very warm or cold country, it will happen faster. The manufacturers factored that in and give a warranty of only 8 to 10 years, or up to 100,000 miles, so that you then buy a new battery for yourself, which will cost you at least $15,000. Only Hyundai gives a lifetime warranty. Imagine getting your battery replaced under warranty and what to do with the old one. The problem is that there is no way to dispose of lithium batteries, recognized as toxic waste, yet it costs more to purify lithium than to mine it. Manufacturers suggest using their batteries for household purposes and waiting for something to come up, but there's another problem associated with them. The production of all cars, both internal combustion engines and electric cars, results in the same number of harmful emissions, because their production process is similar. But making batteries is another 30% of the emissions. So it turns out that building electric cars is not eco-friendly at all. The automakers won't tell you about these problems. They won't tell you that batteries are toxic, that electric car production further pollutes the planet, that the price of an electric car is a child's life, and that electricity also pollutes the air. We all believe that the same Tesla has zero emission, but that's not quite true. The world has high expectations for electric cars. We believe they are our future, but not the solution to global warming. Because this field is about money and marketing. Manufacturers have used a problem that has become mainstream to make money. Today, there's not enough capacity in the world to generate enough energy that does not pollute the atmosphere of our planet. So, companies invest in its development to build up their reputation, including those who pollute the planet the most. For example, Standard Oil, now better known as ExxonMobil, is investing $15 billion to make technology that will trap harmful emissions and store them underground. Or General Motors, who, together with Standard Oil, made gasoline with lead. They placed 85,000 solar panels on the roof of their factory. UAE oil companies are also investing in renewable sources, just as in Australia, where pollution from lithium mining is heavy. They just tell people exactly what they want to hear. Just like with electric cars, people have a stereotype that cars are very harmful to the environment, believing that electric cars are the solution. As our research shows, this is not entirely true. Corporations are trying to create alternatives so that the whole world knows about them, like the Tesla X in 2015.